Hello everybody, welcome for this week's Prophetic Trumpet. We continue on the series of updating the food fight that we started at the beginning of the year. Today we're going to talk about deception. Deception in the food industry. And you're like, what? Our government has the FDA. The food industry would never deceive us. Right. Well, here's where we're going to target things. Today we're going to talk about fast food deception. We're going to talk about what's on the shelves of your favorite grocery store and kind of talk about some of the products that you eat and whether or not they are what they say they are. Now, we have links for everything to again academically back what has been tested and what is going to be spoken of here today, so that way it is out there and it is the truth. Now, we're going to start with Subway, where fresh is the taste. And Subway, boy, we got a couple of them here. It contains so much sugar that it cannot be classified as a true sub sandwich anymore because the bread is not bread. It has to be classified as a confection, and that's because the bread itself has too much sugar in it. And this was ruled in a court. The country's Value Added Tax Act of 1972 says tax-exempt bread cannot have sugar, cannot have fat, and bread improver exceeded 2% of its weight of flour. In Subway's recipe, sugar makes up 10% of the weight of the flour, according to the judgment and the scientific evaluation that was done, and that's 5 times what the law says is legal. And this came from NPR back in 2020. Because we continue on Subway, where again, fresh is still the taste. Their chicken only contains 42% chicken. So I guess it's kind of chicken. The tests were conducted by a DNA researcher at Trent University's Wildlife Forensic DNA Laboratory for a CBC Marketplace episode dedicated to testing fast food chicken dishes and have not been independently confirmed. Now on the episode, the show found that dishes from McDonald's, Wendy's, A&W, and Tim Hortons restaurants in Canada came in at 80% and 90% of chicken DNA. That meant that the test without any sauce or condiment, but seasoning and marination would keep any chicken down from a pure 100% result, the CBC notes. But in Subway's dishes, the results were very much out of the norm. Quite honestly, the quote, the oven roasted chicken scored 53.6% of chicken DNA. The chicken strips were found just to have 42.8% chicken DNA, the CBC reports. The majority of remaining DNA is soy. You know, the very tool that is used to destroy man because of its high estrogen content? Yeah, soy. When you eat Subway chicken, you're getting more soy than you're getting chicken. And again, this came from NPR. We will have the link below. Now, let's kind of switch gears here. Let's go to the products on the store shelves. A Walmart product that is labeled as 100% grated Parmesan cheese got sued for not being 100% Parmesan cheese because it was actually 8% wood pulp. Now, it's supposed to be something that stops all the sticking together, but it's actually wood. This comes from foodprocessing.com, using research from FDA investigations and its own independent tests. Bloomberg News recently reported that many well-known Parmesan cheese brands use wood pulp and cellulose as low-cost fillers, even when they are advertised as 100% Parmesan cheese. Bloomberg earlier reported that it had store-bought grated cheese tested for wood pulp content by an independent laboratory. Some packaged grated Parmesan cheese products contain too little cheese and too much cellulose, according to the independent laboratory test noted in the report. Kraft Heinz, that's the company, the so-called cheese company, labeled 100% grated Parmesan cheese, was only found to have 3.8% cellulose. Between 2 and 4% is considered acceptable, according to the Bloomberg story. And so now Kraft Heinz is among the companies named in the lawsuit for using cellulose fiber instead of being truly 100% grated Parmesan cheese. Makes you wonder what you're getting. All right, so let's continue here. Let's go to the snack aisle. Let's talk about Pringles. You know, Pringles, where the flavor stands alone. They legally aren't allowed to call Pringles potato chips because technically they're only 40% to 42% potato. They have to call them potato crisps instead. This comes from mashed.com, and it says the Taste of Home report that Pringles did not even list potato as an ingredient in the ingredient panel, but are instead made with an ingredient called dehydrated processed potato. Here's why. In 1975, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, that's the FDA, that's the government entity that's supposed to watch out for our own well-being, for what we're putting in our bodies, ruled that a company would have to change the packaging unless they were willing to state that they were using this dried potato ingredient in lieu of actual real potatoes. The brand decided to go with potato crisp instead of potato chips, and to get around the FDA label languaging rules. Now, Gizmodo shares that the process behind the striking stackable shape, unlike other potato chip brands, Pringles, which you recall are by their own illegal admission not chips, beginning with a mixture consisting of potato flakes, rice, wheat, and corn, which is rolled into a super thin layer cut into an oval shape similar to cookies. The excess paste is then removed from the raw dough, which is set on a conveyor belt and is now ready for the finishing to be shaped. The chips are next formed into the brand's signature arch, courtesy of a mold. Not mold itself, but of a mold, and then quickly passed through boiling oil. After they're cooked, the chips are blown dry and sprayed with powdered spice blend, the ingredient of which depends upon the flavor, obviously, that they're going to become. Last, the chips are flipped into stackable positions and shuttled into their tall tin cans and sealed and shipped off to their next destination. So let's move from the snack aisle to the cereal aisle. Yes, you know, part of this complete wholesome breakfast. Well, the reason why Fruit Loops is spelled with two O's is because they're not trying to be cute. Honestly, it's because there's actually 0% fruit in them. Oh, while we're ruining things, all the colors are the same flavor. In case you didn't know that, they're the same flavor. So in 1959, Kellogg's apparently introduced to the world a new cereal. It consisted of multicolored rings and a bowl of a novel breakfast treated like a field of fruit in a bowl, you know? Apparently they were called Fruit Loops, spelled correctly, F-R-U-I-T. However, some people were upset by the name as they felt Kellogg's was falsely proclaiming that the cereal's flavor came from natural ingredients, and a lawsuit known as Paxton versus Kellogg's ultimately resulted in the company changing its name, and a deeper dive into the story reveals even more, because the cereal was instantly recognized among modern consumers and became Fruit Loops, as in F-R-O-T Loops. So a deeper dive into the story reveals that the entire story of Paxton versus Kellogg's is most likely apocryphal. Kellogg's officially states that Fruit Loops were first released in 1963 and makes no mention of the legal battle into the actual fruit content of Fruit Loops. So Fruit Loops may have as much sugar as candy, but none of it comes from real fruit. In fact, the cereal is primarily sweetened with just that, straight up sugar. That can be found at thedailymeal.com. So as we continue our look here into the deception of food practices, let's continue with the theme of breakfast. Mrs. Butterworth. Yes, Mrs. Butterworth actually contains no real maple syrup at all. The only reason it's allowed to say it in front of the bottle is because it's referring to high fructose corn syrup. The claim that Mrs. Butterworth's syrup contains no real maple syrup is supported by its ingredients list, which lists high fructose corn syrup and corn syrup, you know, because there is a difference between the two, as primary components, with no real mention of real maple syrup. The label's use of maple flavored is similar phrasing that does not indicate real maple content, as US FDA regulations allow maple syrup to be used descriptively for flavor, but not a literal ingredient. And this is from foodeducate.com. Now let's go a little bit to an ethnic side. How many of you here eat wasabi? Yeah, probably not too many of you, because not too many of you here in the United States like spicy stuff. But nonetheless, for those of you that do, 99% of the wasabi in the entire world, not just the United States, is fake. It's always just horseradish, mustard, and green food coloring, because the real stuff that looks like this and really is completely altogether different is extremely rare and costs $20 a serving. Chances are, however, you've never actually eaten real wasabi unless you've been in Japan. And if you have, it's probably not very often. This is because most of the wasabi served outside of Japan is a mixture, as stated, of horseradish, mustard, and food coloring. Even in Japan, the demand for real wasabi is so high that you'll often find the horseradish mixture instead, with little to no real wasabi mixed in. Real wasabi tastes more like herbal than it does taste like horseradish. And it's hot, but it doesn't have the lingering, burning aftertaste. It's supposed to taste smoother, cleaner, more plant-like, more vegetable-like than is commonly flavored within the substitute. This horseradish paste is served in restaurants is harsher and not as fresh tasting. You can find this at the HuffPost.com. Now, let's go to protein. That's what we love here in Texas, okay? Meats are being injected at your grocery stores with a plumping solution that is comprised of water, salts, and phosphates, and preservatives to make it stay on the shelf longer. This is done because it increases the weight, it also increases the shelf life, and increases the profits. So you're getting water instead of getting meat by the pound. You can find this at npr.com, by the way. Speaking of meat, really, let's talk to everybody's favorite doctor of nutrition and health and wellness, Bill Gates, because, yeah, he's got a doctorate in his imagination. So he says, and I quote, "With cows, you need to vaccinate them. Change the genetics of cows." This is the billionaire who owns more U.S. farmland than anyone else. Says the path to climate innovation runs through genetically modified livestock. And he's got an organization that is $89 million in adoption grants that has benefited from this. You can find this at the climatedepot.com. He wants to vaccinate your meat supply if you're a beef eater, because he feels like if you can vaccinate the food supply, everybody that tries to run from vaccination cannot run, because according to him, everybody should be vaccinated, and because he's a doctor in his own imagination. So let's go to something sweeter. Let's go to Kit Kats. Give me a break. It's a Kit Kat bar, okay? So that may be one of the most popular handed out treats really during Halloween. But if you've ever wondered what is inside of this kind of chocolate confection, it's not just the chocolate or the whole wafer. Get ready for this mind-blowing inception, because Kit Kats are filled with the remnants of ground-up Kit Kat bars. The mind-boggling fact is it come to light thanks to a British documentary called the BBC's Two Inside the Factory, where factory workers from the assembly line for the popular candy explained that any broken up or discarded Kit Kats go into rework, where they're used for the filling of the wafer. Nestle confirmed that the factory workers' revelation with the Today Show, the chocolate layer, or choco layer as they call it, the filling between the wafer and the Kit Kat, is made from cocoa liqueur, sugar, and a small amount of reworked Kit Kat bars. A Nestle UK representative said, "Please note, reworked Kit Kat product cannot be sold." So they're recycling Kit Kats. That comes from mashed.com. Okay, so my final portion here, we're going to talk about, well, my second to last portion, we're going to go back to the fast food industry where we started. McDonald's, yes, it sells approximately 9 million pounds of fries every day. And its ingredients, all over the world, 9 million pounds. But the contrary belief, McDonald's fries are not one ingredient wonder. And while the spuds are the main ingredient, at least you can say that, that's more than you can say about Pringles, there are actually a total of 19 ingredients in the French fries for McDonald's, including vegetable oil comprised of canola, corn, soybean, and hydrogenated soybean oils. Notice how much soy is in this, including vegetable oil, as well as milk, wheat-derived natural beef flavoring is in the fries, dextrose for that nice golden yellow texture, sodium acid pyrophosphate to prevent color changes when frozen, citric acid for freshness, because don't we add that to all of our stuff at home? There's dimethylpropylsiloxane to reduce foaming, because, you know, when you're eating the fries, you don't want to foam at the mouth, I guess. Oh, and the last ingredient is salt. Yeah, salt. So this is, again, at mash.com. So as we're ready to wrap this up, and I've gone well beyond 15 minutes here, we try to keep these within 15 minutes. The final portion of the food fight is this, and this is what I want you to kind of focus in on. All the birds in the world, of all the birds in the world, isn't it strange that the only birds they want to kill because of bird flu are chickens? All the animals in the world, isn't that strange that the only animal whose flatulence can cause global warming are cows? These are the two most consumed form of proteins in the American population. Isn't it a little strange that that is what is always targeted? Further, historically, Native Americans fought the American federal government to repeal the invaders in this struggle over the land, and we're not going to get into the debate about that, but General Sheridan had a brilliant idea to attack the supply lines of the Native Americans, systematically culling the bison exclusively, eventually starving the militant Indian tribes into eventually surrendering. Isn't that kind of what is being positioned here today in the United States by entities, by uber wealthy people that want to bring this country to its knees? The four Gospels. In the four Gospels, Jesus warns as a sign of famine, as a sign of the end times. Something to think about. We want to thank you for joining us for this week's Prophetic Trumpet. Though it's lengthy, get it out and share it with the rest of the world. Make everybody aware of what's going on under our very noses or on our very plates. Just trying to kill you, and is not what it claims to be. Have yourself a blessed day. We'll see you next time.